This is Chicago. At the dawn of the 21st century, Chicago's media was dominated by a handful of major corporations. But a resistance movement arose to free Chicago's media from their clutches. One player in this movement is the Chicago Independent Media Center and its TV show, Chicago Independent Television. The Independent Media Center is a worldwide network of grassroots correspondents committed to using the tools of the media for promoting social and economic justice. You are watching this month's dispatch from the Chicago Independent Media Center.
Welcome to Chicago Independent Television, a collection of progressive video reports by grassroots media workers produced free from corporate or commercial support or influence. I'm your host, Gwendolyn Chubb. In this episode, we'll see two segments about recent actions against major media and media policy. And we'll see three segments related to the environment, including coverage of a global climate convergence and a protest against BP's carelessness in Lake Michigan. All that and more coming up. Stay tuned.
Here at Exxon, we hate your children. We all know the climate crisis will rip their world apart, but we don't care because it's making us rich. That's right. Every year, Congress gives the fossil fuel industry over $10 billion in subsidies. That's your tax dollars lining our pockets. Making a fortune destroying your kids' future? At Exxon, that's what we call good business. ExxonHatesYourChildren.com.
Mr. Bishop, I want to use this picture on the front page of our next issue.
Oh, come now, Nancy. We can't print a picture like that. Paper is read by people all over the city. Just think what a picture like that would do to the reputation of our newspaper.
I don't think we should hide things just because they're unpleasant. How do we stop things like this if we don't let the people know they're happening?
Members of Occupy Chicago held a Christmas celebration called Occupy Your Kids, which included food, games, art, and of course, pointed political commentary.
Welcome back to Chicago Independent Television. The FCC has advanced a controversial rule change to America's net neutrality policy. This has spurred widespread outrage, including a protest at the FCC's Midwest Bureau in the Chicago suburbs.
Isn't this like a public office?
We could stand outside the office. This is not a public facility.
My name is Joe Knorr, and we're here at the FCC office in Park Ridge, Illinois, and the reason we're here is to basically put pressure on the FCC to do the right thing when it comes to net neutrality. Right now, things have moved forward, and they're not finalized yet, but what we need to do is regulate the internet as a communications channel. It is, after all, a mainstream communications, and to allow the big three, like companies like Comcast, AT&T, and others, to basically filter that, which effectively, by slowing down packets, you can kill any website, you can kill any place of business, you can kill anything on the internet just by slowing down the packets. to allow large corporations to make that type of judgment is unacceptable. It is a public trust. It should be treated as a public trust, and this is the free speech issue of our time. They've moved forward, but there's a review period, and basically it hasn't passed yet, and that's not going to happen until the end of the year. So it's not too late to do something about it. And you got to put heat on them now, because this is when the policy is going to be formulated and firmed up, and that's what we're going to have to live with for God knows how long.
Who is formulating the policy?
The FCC. There's a board. The FCC is the board. But
there's 5 members. There's 5 commissioners.
5 commissioners.
3 Democratic, 2
But they listen to the politicians. They listen to the politicians. And that's what has to happen. You have to put the heat on your politicians to put the heat on the FCC to do the right thing.
Jill Stein. You're watching Chicago Independent Television.
Chicago Independent Television presents Profiles in Cowardice with Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel. At the 2012 Montrose Beach Kite Festival, held the same weekend as the 2012 NATO Summit in Chicago, and co-sponsored by the NATO Summit and by war contractor Boeing, Mayor Rahm Emanuel made an appearance, but abruptly left. Why did he leave? Was there a policy emergency? Was the kite festival overrun by lepers? No. Chicago's badass mayor was running away from the combined strength of 2 protesters.
Political public relations stunt, and everybody can see through it. You give kites to kids in America and drop bombs on kids in Iraq. You drop bombs on kids in Afghanistan. You drop bombs on kids that speak Arabic. No to NATO. No to the warmongers. No to Boeing. Go home. Get out of here.
You're not even from Chicago! Give us our libraries, man! Give us our mental health care facilities!
What do you have to say for yourself that's not in front of a camera? Defend yourself! Defend bombers! Defend the cluster bombs! Defend the kids that have been killed! No to NATO! Go home!
We want a mental health care facility in every ward! Get some of your money!
The mayor can't even speak for himself! Speak on behalf of NATO! Speak on behalf of Boeing! What can you say? Nothing! Because you're a bunch of murderers! Go home, warmonger! Go home, murderers!
We want our mental health care clinics that you're closing on us!
No more cluster bombs! No more Boeing! No more hypocritical public relations stuff!
And now Rahm Emanuel is off to go fillet some lobbyists. This has been Profiles in Cowardice.
Continuing with the theme of media, Chicago also saw a local protest as part of the nationwide action under the banner, the March Against the Mainstream Media.
Frank from Occupy Naperville. I am here today for the March Against the Mainstream Media because corporate media is not objective. They take money from advertisers, they take money from politicians, and therefore do not report the truth or the facts of what is happening in our society.
Jackson, I guess, with Chicago Anonymous Big Group, and I'm here because our country is heading in a really bad direction towards total state oligarchy since they weren't already there. But most people either don't realize or don't care, and a big part of why they don't is because of the news reporting of the mainstream media. So that's why I'm out here.
Okay, I guess I'm not happy with the way that the banks were bailed out. and the people were left to struggle. I don't like the fact that our government has been bought and paid for by billionaires, and there's no responsibility to the people anymore, only to the ultra wealthy. And I don't know what else to tell you. This is frightening me.
I'm Ron. I hang around with the Occupy Naperville people, and this week we decided to come here and support the protest against the media, and that's largely why I'm here. This sign is the truth as far as I can tell, as is this sign. Whoops, this sign. So, what was I going to say? That's it.
I'm Glenn Greenwald, and you're watching Chicago Independent Television.
Welcome back to Chicago Independent Television. Here's a segment on the first day of the Global Climate Convergence held recently in Chicago.
What we are here to say today is that fracking is radioactive and that the legislature needs to act now to correct that. Since January 2013, organizations like Frack Free Illinois, SAFE, Tar Sands Free Midwest, Rising Tide, and NEIS have been writing and telling members of the legislature to take corrective action on the absence of regulation and statutes governing the radiation content of fracking. We pointed out that the radiation from radon gas and radium is a threat to the workers in the immediate vicinity of the wells and the local residents who will be forced to live near the fracking rigs. To date, nothing has been done to correct this omission, either by the legislature nor by the Department of Natural Resources, which itself attempted to ignore public comments on radiation and fracking during the public meetings held last fall. Public pressure forced them to grudgingly include an acknowledgement that these rules need to be developed. In the meantime, Governor Patrick Quinn has allowed so-called test wells to be drilled, still in the absence of any rules and regulations governing radiation exposure from fracking. In the 33 years of watchdogging nuclear reactors, nuclear waste, radioactive contamination, NEIS has never seen such an oblivious and unconscionable abdication of responsibility for the public health and safety from any level of government on any other issue. The governor, the legislature, the Department of Natural Resources needs to know that their failure to act knowingly places the public and the environment at risk.
Fracking leaks, 5% it said of wells leak immediately, and much greater numbers leak in the next years and decades that follow. Methane causes about 100 times as much global warming per unit of gas released. You've probably heard about Ohio apparently just shut down its fracking, just put a moratorium on fracking because they've now documented that fracking, as well as the disposal of the polluted water, causes earthquakes. We know that, we have a drought going on. There's a big drought going on in much of the U.S. right now, especially in California. We don't have water to spare, and fracking uses huge amounts of water.
We call on the legislature to put this indefensible lapse in intelligence at the forefront of their upcoming legislation business. All fracking wastes with radioactive content need to be classified, treated, handled, transported, stored, and disposed of as radioactive waste. No test wells should be allowed, and the ones that are in operation should be shut down until new legislation and rules are put in place on radiation. And as for the public reaction, we remind Governor Quinn and the legislature that if these actions are not taken, come November, there will be blood politically.
All of the volatile organic compounds, the carcinogens, that come off the frack rigs is dangerous to cows. The cows breathe it in, it starts to affect their blood, they drink the water, they start to develop anemia and they die. It is dangerous and poisonous to all of the wildlife.
There's new data on the air pollution now showing, in fact, that birth defects are increased as much as 100% for some kinds of birth defects specifically for neural tube defects. It requires enormous amounts of water in order to carry it out, and then it requires that polluted water to be injected into the ground, and it's now been established by scientists in Ohio. The act of fracking itself causes earthquakes, and it's not like we know where all the fissures are, all these seismic gaps in the ground. We don't know. And earthquakes occur where you don't expect them. In the Colorado River Basin now, in fact, there's a recent study showing 90% of all water samples in that area carry endocrine disrupting chemicals, and they cause cancers and reproductive abnormalities and infertility. So the science is very clear that this is a very destructive and dangerous process.
I went upstairs and I delivered a violation notice about the fact that Governor Quinn was violating the rights of Mother Earth by allowing hydraulic fracturing to come to the state of Illinois, when it had some language on there about the fact that you can't regulate fracking. There's no way to regulate fracking, and we know that fracking's already happening, and we know that the law that was passed last May is not protecting people. They're using methods that aren't even covered in the rules.
The idea that natural gas and fracking is a bridge to a clean energy future is completely false. The reality is, for every job in the fossil fuel world, we can create 3 times as many jobs in clean renewable energy. This is not the future that American workers deserve. We deserve a future that works for us. That's within our reach. That's why we're standing up in the global climate convergence. We're saying, let's get together, because if we get together across our issues, the issues of fracking and nuclear power, which also needs to be shut down, for healthcare as a human right, for jobs as a human right, for putting everyone back to work in living wage jobs, and downsizing the military, demilitarize our economy and our system of international relations. If we all get together, we have more than enough people to push this forward. And we need to build a social movement. It's not only that we need to get together, we need to get together and we need to stand up and we need to be in the streets. So go to globalclimateconvergence.org, join in, and we'll be unstoppable together.
This is Jeremy Scahill, and you're watching Chicago Independent Television.
All we ever get is a veil of distortion and lies and misrepresentations that obscure reality.
We have an update on that. Good evening. We have a lot of news to tell you about 763 near the 15.
Giant media corporations decide what is news and what is not news.
Is to control people's ideas, is to control their imagination.
The news we rely on is in the hands of commercial enterprises.
If it didn't appear in the New York Times, Fox News, CNN, it never happened.
There are certain events in journalism that you may not cover.
There were incidences of physical abuse.
CBS decided this is not a story we're going to fight for.
All of a sudden, the plane exploded. And one guy goes, "Oh, you think it's a missile?"
It was a complete act of deceit.
Well, we basically supported the Bush policy.
When that many people die, you owe it to them to find out what really happened.
Spying,
censorship,
militarism, secrets, corruption,
power, lies,
Profit.
This is the mother of all scandals.
Corporations are making profit off the killing.
You cannot go against the White House and survive.
There has never been a conspiracy.
Wars really are started by the mainstream media.
Welcome back to Chicago Independent Television. Here are 2 segments of recent Chicago environmental protests against major corporations, one against BP and another against Monsanto.
This past
Last Monday evening, BP spilled an estimated 1,638 gallons of oil into Lake Michigan. This is the drinking water for 7 million people in the Chicagoland area.
BP, what do you say? How much oil did you spill today? BP, what do you say? How much oil did you spill today? BP, what do you say?
A couple of concerned citizens, in collaboration with the Global Climate Convergence, which is doing 10 days of action from Earth Day to May Day, have come here to the BP business headquarters to deliver an open letter to the EPA as well as BP, basically demanding that there's an open public investigation of the oil spill that just happened, to make sure that if there are any tar sands oil that are sinking to the seabed, that those are eradicated, and that the water and air and land surrounding Lake Michigan is tested for any toxins or carcinogens, to ensure that our drinking water is safe for this Chicagoland area of millions of people. And we also, the people of Chicago here, are demanding that BP forfeits all rights to contracts in the Chicagoland area for the foreseeable future. So,
actually, BP was on the no federal contract list for years following what happened in New Orleans, and they were only removed from it last month. And then this happens again. So obviously they're not taking the proper precautions as a billion-dollar corporation to make sure that the environments that they work within are safe.
I'm speaking today for tar sands-free Midwest. We are outraged by news this week of British Petroleum's oil spill into Lake Michigan. This spill happened just 7 miles from the intake source of our drinking water, the drinking water of millions of people. Just as outrageous is that no one is revealing the type of oil and chemicals that were spilled. We have strong suspicion that this was tar sands oil because 80 to 90% of British Petroleum Whiting's oil, since their $4 billion upgrade, is Canadian heavy crude, in other words, tar sands. BP is the largest tar sands refinery in the entire United States. As several people have outlined, the one problem with the tar sands spill is that the oil sinks in the water. It's impossible to clean it up. We've seen this in Kalamazoo. As we learned with the Kalamazoo River spill over 3 years ago, the river is still full of tar sands. Not only is tar sands impossible to clean up, it is also full of volatile compounds, chemicals to make it flow. In a tar sand spill, these chemicals evaporate for at least 24 hours after the spill, and yet they took at least 15 hours before notifying the public. We demand that British Petroleum reveal what was spilled, reveal what chemicals were released, reveal what went wrong, and that they shut the damn refining operations until this problem is resolved.
Not only did the Global Climate Convergence demand to know answers from BP, but we also want a full public investigation done by the EPA.
No poison my drinking water. No poison my drinking water. No poison my drinking water. No poison my drinking water.
yeah, and it's just an indication that corporations such as these are not responsible enough and do not have their priorities towards the safety of the citizens of the planet, and that they're a threat to human society.
Is this where State Street Investments are? State Street?
That I don't know. You need to make it a premises.
Eventually, Monsanto or Fidelity and Vanguard and State Street, they're not going to want to be invested in Monsanto anymore because so many people are going to be dumping them because they don't want to be invested in Monsanto.
People should divest of Monsanto stock. Unfortunately, you have a situation where pension funds and 401ks and mutual funds the kinds of funds that people who are just the ordinary man on the street, the school teacher, the plumber, might have a little money in a stock fund of some kind, a little investment against a rainy day. They might have a pension fund, their union pension fund, and They buy and sell stock all the time, and it's very, very hard to tease out one particular company. But yes, of course, if they can do it, they should say something and say they don't want to hold Monsanto stock in any form.
A 100-year-old company. They've been making chemicals, PCBs, dioxin, Agent Orange, 2,4-D, and more recently Roundup and Roundup Ready soybeans, so they can put even more Roundup onto the ground and poison the earth and us who eat that food.
They greatly intimidate small farmers and actually sue farmers if the wind brings their patented seeds onto their crops. The GMOs have barely been tested. To the extent they are, the only test that the FDA has listened to is Monsanto's own tests. They've ignored the independent scientists, and in fact Monsanto has done everything they can to shut down every legitimate study.
One of the things that have occurred is that in the early 90s, when GMOs were going to be passed or not passed, the FDA was considering it, and what happened is that Monsanto got involved with its public policy makers and basically convinced the presidential administrations of the time to hire Monsanto employees to run the FDA at the time to oversee the approval and regulation of GMOs. In fact, what exactly occurred is the lack thereof regulation of GMOs because they claim there's no difference between regular food and GMO food. But if there's no difference, then why are they allowed patents? It doesn't make any sense. They are inherently different.
Divest Monsanto now! Divest Monsanto now! Divest Monsanto now!
I visited in my office in Springfield with a veteran that you'll hear from today about the importance of this particular bill today, medical marijuana that will heal and help many, many people deal with pain. Pain from very severe illnesses, whether it's multiple sclerosis or HIV or cancer or muscular dystrophy or a variety of other very serious illnesses that affect literally thousands of people in Illinois. Yeah.
Hi, I'm AJ Signeri from the Out Front Show on Q4 Community Radio, your source for activism in the arts. Listen to us at QUE4.org and on 1680 AM at select locations throughout Chicago.